it's scary to go into any new environment. And yeah, it might be an epic fail. But on the flip side, it also might turn into an incredible opportunity where you get to meet the most badass version of yourself if you are willing to just try. I have a special surprise. Now that you have heard from Rebecca, Lauren, and Sophia individually, now all of the women are coming together for a little panel discussion about what it's like to be a woman in this strength training space. So get ready because here comes Sophia, Lauren, and Rebecca. What barriers do you think women face in strength training, whether it's facing different things like societal norms or access to resources or even just self-perception at this point in time?
I'll start this one off. I think the biggest barrier for women in strength training and fitness right now is really self-perception. I feel like we all have access to resources. And I feel like as a society, the norm to strength train has really downloaded pretty fully. But I think self-perception in the sense of like, it's going to require too much commitment. I'm fine the way I am. I don't really need to. It would be nice to be strong, but like, I don't believe I can do it, or it's too hard, or just something around like their belief that it's not 100% necessary, or there's just something that kind of blocks them from really stepping fully into embracing that strength training is the thing they should be doing. So yeah, I just think that the narrative and the drive to embrace strength training still needs like a little bit more work for women.
And do you feel like this is something that you even overcame, having a background in dance before going into strength training?
No, because my relationship with my body as a dancer wasn't that great. So the drive to start weightlifting was actually a little bit more present because I didn't have the best relationship with my body in the dance world. But then once I realized how strong I was, it was like, oh, there's a way for me to actually feel confident about my body, and there's a way to change it through science and consistency. So it was like I was more motivated to start strength training. And then when I did, I really like discovered the magic of it.
I think that's really interesting. Sophia, what do you think in regards to what Lauren's saying?
So, kind of going off what Lauren's saying with the self perception, I think that it has gotten better for sure with the whole muscle mommy trend of like, oh, I want to, get muscles and look fit and healthier. Although I do still think there are some women who feel like, oh, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get too bulky and look like a man or look like this certain woman who strength trains. I do still think that's very present, but I also do think it has to do with access to resources, not in the sense that Lauren said, like we all have access to these resources, but it's navigating which resources are right. Because I still see on social media and even in the gym, women following these influencers who claim to be experts in personal training, and they're still doing these very outdated or these outdated workouts that they think are going to get them the big booty that they want. I still see that a lot through people through the gym or on social media. So I think it's navigating the right way to the correct resources to get the actual results that they want and to experience the correct journey, if you will. So yeah, and I still think also it could be a lot of women, depending on their age, like women in their 40s who've never strength trained before. I see them come into the gym, they don't really know what they're doing. So yeah, they have access to the resources, but they're not taking advantage of using those resources, like getting a coach or having a buddy to kind of show them the ropes. So we do have all these things readily available at our fingertips. It's just finding the right path forward.
Why do you think that is? Why, I mean, I know so many women and they're like all about it on Instagram, like I'm following this workout. But why do you think they're resistant to necessarily getting the buddy or getting the coach?
I think it's a couple of different things. One, I think it's they probably don't want to expend any of their resources or invest any more money into that process because maybe they're skeptical. Because coaching, if you get a good coach, it's expensive and it is a commitment. So I think people might be hesitant or skeptical of going down that line because of the time commitment, the financial commitment as well. And then also maybe they're embarrassed because they don't know anything. They don't have any information or education on how to strength train correctly or navigate through the gym. So they might be a little bit too afraid to ask for help.
Rebecca, what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I think part of it could be the commitment level and the financial commitment, the time commitment, the energy commitment. I think potentially people are afraid to fail, and so they don't even start. And I think that's a big factor at play here. And it's going back to kind of the first point that was made earlier is there's clearly not a lack of information. I think there's almost too much information and people can become overwhelmed and have paralysis by analysis because they hear all these different conflicting opinions and potentially all correct. But if you don't know the space and you don't know the industry or you don't know strength training and kinesiology and exercise science, and not to say you have to know, deep levels of science to be successful, but there's so much information out there that it can become overwhelming and you just throw in the towel and say, like, forget it. I don't know where to start. I don't know what path is right for me. I don't know what any of this means. So I'm not gonna go forward with it.
And that just seems like such a shame. I mean, I remember I think the first woman on the panel I met was Lauren. And I met Lauren before I really started kind of getting more into kettlebells. I was definitely more cardio bunny at the time. And just watching the whole process of what you were doing, I remember just thinking like, wow, how could I get started? Because there's just so much going on. And I think what's really cool about the three of you is you've all gone down these very different pathways of strength training. And clearly, you have all shown, you can get your body strong, you can feel empowered, you can do incredible things so long as you have the coach, you have the right strategy. But to, what you were just saying, Rebecca, there's just so much information out there that it's really hard to navigate. So, you know, for these women, what do you encourage they do if they do want to make a significant change? What is step one?
Start and stay consistent. I think that probably one of the biggest barriers to people's success in anything, whether strength training or otherwise, is lack of consistency. And people hop from program to program, or they don't do it with enough frequency and enough consistency, and then they think it doesn't work, and then they stop. And so just sticking with it and seeing what happens, because if you stick with something, you're going to see change. And then you can, after 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, do a temperature check. Am I happy with the results? Is it working? If yes, continue on course. If no, change something. A good coach can obviously help with that. But if someone's trying to navigate this alone, just stick with the process and then reassess, reflect, and move forward accordingly.
Lauren, from your experience, is that something that is very much the same going into the bodybuilding space?
Absolutely. I also think that encouraging people to take a little more responsibility to like embrace this as a learning process, and that might require you do a little bit of research, or you learn about like what is strength training, what are some coaches providing, what is coaching. Like, I almost think a little resistance to having a coach is, like Rebecca was saying, there's just so much information, so many different types of coaches, so people are just like, oh, I don't want to take it too serious. It's just like, then they don't start. But it's like, embrace this as a learning process too. And it's not necessarily that you have to pass or fail. It's just like, this is a journey of you elevating yourself and becoming a better version of yourself. And that requires education. So don't be so overwhelmed. Yes, it's fine that there's a lot of information, but like also take a little responsibility to learn so that you can get started, so that you can be consistent. Yeah, that's my take on that.
Sophia, is there anything else that you would want to add to that?
I think what Rebecca and Lauren said are accurate, just staying consistent. I mean, how I broke into powerlifting was I went online, I did research on extremely basic powerlifting programs, and I followed this free program online for about 6 months. So I stayed consistent with it. I didn't have a coach, I didn't have a buddy that I was doing it with. I was by myself and just remaining consistent and just following some sort of guidance is what's going to move the needle a little bit. And then what Rebecca said, okay, in maybe a month or 2 months, take a temperature check and see, am I liking these results? Do I need to change anything? Do I need to do some more research? Maybe it is time to get a coach.
Yeah, I like that you you did some research, but then you just picked something and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna, I've done my research. I think I'm gonna start here and I'm just gonna do this until I have more information to then make another decision. So that's like a really good example of kind of what all three of us said put together. So that's great.
I think something that is really great for women to understand and hear from all of your experiences is just the fact that this is something, yes, research it, figure out what exactly you want on your own, but at some point, having access to community or being at community with a buddy, with a coach, it makes a lot more sense than necessarily continuing to go down the road completely by yourself. And Sophia, you were just saying, I spent 6 months solo beginner program, but eventually, is that enough? What do you guys think?
I think that it depends on what you want to do with that, right? So I joined a barbell club after that. They started talking about competitions, and I was like, oh, well, I like to compete. I'm competitive. And then it was game over from there. And then I started my competitive career because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be a pro powerlifter and among the elite. It took time, but I got coaches. I am now at a powerlifting gym. So it really depends on like, do I want to continue this recreationally? Is this just something that is important in my life, but I'm okay with, kind of remaining behind the scenes? Because I mean, all three of our realms, they're sports, they're competitive sports. So it really depends on what your level of commitment is, energy level, financial commitment, and finding the correct resources. So you're always leveling up somehow if you are trying to be competitive in your sport.
Do you think even for the women who might not necessarily be interested in competing in any of these sports, but even just a little bit more interested in progressing on their fitness journey, there is a need to have some sense of community in order to move forward?
I think it's really important. I was a solo powerlifter from when I started until I moved to Virginia for at my first duty station. And I joined a powerlifting gym. And it's insane how it changes the game when you're in a community of people who are in your sport and like-minded. Even if you're not super competitive, even if you're not a pro, like having that support of other people who just get it and understand you, it helps so much. Like just having people show up to spot and load you, having people watch you lift and making tweaks and making critiques, even if you're not competing, super helpful. Having someone next to you in the squat rack lifting super heavy weight and like you're just dying, it's super motivating because they're next to you doing it and you have people actually cheering you on and yelling at you to keep going. So I think it's extremely important and such a game changer when you are in a community of people.
Hmm. I love that. Rebecca, what do you have to add to that in terms of how community has played a role in your journey as the athlete or even your journey as the coach watching a client?
Community is super valuable. Is it possible to be successful on your own? Yes, but I think there's a ceiling there. No one who achieved anything great did it alone. And maybe they train alone, but they didn't do it alone. They had the support of a coach. They had the support of a community. They had, whether that's in person or virtual, extended community, whatever, no one did it alone. And so I think having that, I think coaching is huge for me. Like for me, I'm not part of a big barbell club. My coach and I train together a couple times a week, and there's usually one or two other guys, and they're all over 65. So it's a very different vibe than probably most people who are training with people their age. And there are times when I wish I had a little bit more of a similar demographic that, that's up and coming and hitting their athletic peak. But regardless, it's still way different when I'm training alone in my garage versus when I'm with my coach and with my other teammates, even if they're training for masters 65 to 69-year-old competition. So it's still fun. There's always something to learn, and there's just power in proximity and being surrounded by people who are on their own journey, on their own mission, and who want to see you succeed.
So fantastic. Wait, did you say there's 65-year-old men that you're with?
Yes. So there's one other guy who competes like at the world level in masters. He's early 60s, and then my coach is 77 or 78, and then the guy who owns the garage where we train, or the house that has the garage where we train, he's 75 or 76, and they've been training in that garage for 50 years.
So what's that experience like even for you being surrounded by men and men are watching you as, I mean, I think any woman who is in the strength training sports, like we are breaking societal norms, right? This is not necessarily something we see every single woman doing at this point. So what has that felt like, having all of these older men a part of your community watching you do what you do? Like, just what is the vibe?
It's a lot of hard work and not a lot of talking, and there's no music. It's just the most old school lifting environment you could imagine, but they're so supportive. I mean, they're like my parents and grandparents age and kind of vibes, right? So it's very different than having worked at gyms in the past and being surrounded by similar age and whatever, but it's unique, and I'll always be grateful for it because they come with so much wisdom and so many decades of experience and knowledge, and watching like things change over the years. And they've seen, in my sport, women weren't competing in the Olympics until 2000, and they were lifting 3 decades prior to that. And so they've seen things change over the years, and they totally embrace my role in the community and in the club, in the garage, if you will. And they love seeing me thrive and rise to the level that I'm at now. And they've been part of that journey. So I'll always be grateful for that.
That sounds like such a unique position to be in and
Fair.
really cool. I think it's also really nice just to hear like the support of an older generation of men supporting a woman who is, I think that's really great to hear.
Yeah, it's really cool. And one of the guy who owns the house, he'll come to practice and he'll be like, I was at church this weekend and I was showing your videos to all the people at church about how strong you are. So it's cool. They're super proud of me, and they're like parents and grandparents. That's what it feels like to me, even though they're like my teammates and coaches. So
I love that. And I think it's also really great to hear that your team doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, you know, people your age. Like I think a lot of times, at least when I think of team, my head immediately goes to like high school sports. So I'm going to be competing with girls my age doing our thing. So it's interesting to get that take. Lauren, what has your experience been like in regards to how community plays a role in strength training for you as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, energy is contagious. And I remember when I was doing my preps for competing, seeing other competitors, like even though it's a solo sport, seeing other competitors also going through the preps at the same time. And it's like, oh, they got up at 4 to do their cardio. Okay, I can get up at 4 to do my cardio, 4 a.m. And it's like that energy of support, even though you're on separate preps, that is really helpful. And also just your community can be a source of an objective eye, especially when you have those like really like tough phases or moments in your training process where you're like, like I'm just not doing well, oh, I didn't get that lift, or like, oh, I look like, or I feel like crap, or I'm not like looking how I want to look for the show. It's like your community can actually be a really great source of like objective feedback and like, no, you're doing great, you're on track, it's just a moment, because we're so emotionally tied to our performance, and like they're seeing it from the outside, and it's really helpful to like keep you going and also just help regulate and detach a little bit from your own process. So it's really important.
Are you ready to start building strength but feel overwhelmed by complicated workouts and influencers on social media? Foundations is your answer. If you're new to strength training and want a simple, effective way to get stronger, build muscle, and drop body fat, Foundations was designed just for you. What you'll need to get started are just 3 kettlebells. That's it. These 3 kettlebells are all you need to unlock your strength, start building muscle, and start seeing real results. There's no fancy moves, no complicated routines, just the basics that will help you to progress safely and confidently. What you'll get when you join: simple, proven exercises where you will master foundational movements like squats, deadlifts, and presses that will give you strength and confidence. A progressive training program, step-by-step video and written guidance to help you improve no matter where you are starting from. A safe, effective training routine. You'll get to focus on form and build a body that's strong from the inside out. And the best part, it's DIY. You can start right away, no waiting around. You just buy the program today and you get to start building strength from the comfort of your home. You don't need to be fancy to get strong. You just need a solid foundation and the right approach. Foundations is perfect for the woman who is new to strength training and wants to take it at her own pace. She wants to feel empowered, she wants to feel strong, and she wants to feel more confident in her body. If you're ready to begin, visit www.colleenconlon.com for more details and grab your Foundations program today. Again, all you need are 3 kettlebells. I'll take care of the rest. Do you think things would have been different if you didn't have access to that type of community? What would that have looked like if you didn't?
I think as a competitor, the process from prep to show would have been a lot more difficult because you don't know what you don't know, or it requires a lot of mental grit. And I think not that I would have given up, I just think there would have been just a lot, it would have been a lot tougher to like see it to the finish line when you're doing it alone without someone overseeing it, without other people supporting it. I mean, I wouldn't have given up, but I just don't think it would have been as successful of a process.
It sounds like the overall message from all of you is that we love a team, we love a community, we love a coach, we love feeling support. So for those people who might feel like, no, I don't need that, maybe like they're starting the journey, or maybe it's not the very beginning, but maybe they're at like a midway point and they're like, no, I got this. Anything that you might want to just like say to that person?
I mean, everyone's different. Everyone learns and thrives differently. I felt like that, like, oh no, I'm alone. I got this. I don't really need to be in a barbell club when I was working and training at Equinox. But I would say that it just really opens up your eyes to what's more and what the sport has to offer that's more. Like, I was in my own little bubble, and now that I've joined a powerlifting gym, I have a reputable powerlifting coach, I'm around other athletes, pros, I like say to myself, I'm like, wow, I didn't know anything about powerlifting. Like, it was insane the amount of information and networking I was able to do, and just to educate myself better and elevate myself as an athlete more, because you can only do so much when you're alone.
Mm.
When you don't have access to other people's experience or knowledge, like you're like Rebecca said, there's a ceiling. You're not going to progress as you would if you're going to be completely solo. And the people that we see like on social media or that we know who do it solo, like Rebecca said, they're not completely solo. They have coaches. They have maybe a buddy or two that they do compete with or lift train with. So the people who are super successful that you see alone, they're not alone.
One of my favorite quotes is an African proverb, and it says to go fast, go alone, but to go far, you go together. And I feel like any woman who is listening to this episode right now, the power of being on a team, having a coach, having a community is just something so big, even if it might not seem like it's that big in that initial moment of necessarily getting started. Something that was interesting right before we signed on to do this panel discussion, Sophia, Lauren, and Rebecca were all giving short little intros to each other. And I didn't realize how much crossover there actually was between sports. Rebecca, I didn't know that you ever had a stint in bodybuilding.
Yeah, it was short, but yes.
So I'm kind of curious, if you could take one lesson or a value from another strength sport and apply it to your own, what would that be?
I would probably go with discipline, which is kind of a theme for my life, but weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting requires all of our sports require a ton of commitment and discipline. But from having experienced prepping for a bodybuilding show, that level of discipline is unmatched because as a weightlifter, I need to keep my body weight within a certain range. But for the most part, I don't really limit myself on what I can eat or not eat. And water, like I don't really track my water intake anymore. I kind of just go with what's intuitive for me because I don't need to dial everything into the exact ounce and macro and gram of everything. But when I was competing and prepping for the figure show, admittedly, I was much younger and much newer in the industry, but everything had to be to a T. And so the level of discipline to do your cardio and your strength training, as a weightlifter, I don't do cardio specific sessions because low intensity steady state cardio doesn't really benefit me for my sport. Everything's fast twitch and powerful and heavy. So it's just it's everything with bodybuilding. And so it's not something I ever want to do again. I'm really glad I had the experience to do it once so I can speak to that and respect it. But it's just another level of discipline across the board.
Man, Lauren, do you have anything to tie to that, knowing that is your sport?
Yeah, I would actually, when I was thinking about this, I could take the concept and you guys serve as a great example of like digging for that 1% more because in bodybuilding, like it's not about performance at all. It's really all about aesthetics and like there's no PRs being hidden. But when you're training, it like I could just there's always moments where me specifically, but all of us, listening to this could dig for that extra 1%, like, cause you guys are pushing yourself literally to hit that PR and like giving it everything you have. And it's just like, I feel like we can do that a little bit more in our day to day training just to really push ourselves and like know what we're made of.
Love that. Sophia, I know you've spent a little time in Olympic weightlifting.
I got into CrossFit and I just love cleaning and I'm terrible at snatching. I still like to do it, but yeah, CrossFit and getting strong in squat, bench, deadlift, cleaning, jerking, and snatching is what kind of propelled me into powerlifting because I just liked getting strong. But yeah, I was a swimmer growing up. I was a dancer for 15 years. Training for Navy diving is like powerlifting is very counterintuitive to that because you have to be able to be extremely fast and running and swimming and calisthenics. So yeah, powerlifting didn't really help me that much at all. So I had to kind of focus on that and then be able to come back to powerlifting after making it through the pipeline.
So, what would you say one of the biggest lessons have been that have helped you in your sport, or maybe like not even in your sport, but in your career as the Navy diver?
Patience, because for, I think, especially for new people and even like seasoned athletes, even I still struggle with this, is just having patience. Like, especially being so far into the sport, it's your PRs are few and far between because you can only get so strong, right? So even like a 2.5 pound PR is like amazing for someone who's been in a sport for like 10 years. Whereas like when you first started lifting, you would be making like 40-pound PRs, 100-pound PRs. And that just isn't going to happen anymore once you get to a certain level. So patience, and even lifts that you have hit in the past or that you think you can hit and you're not on a max strength cycle and you miss it and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Am I weak? It's like, no, you just need to follow your program, trust the process, and be patient with yourself. And missing a lift doesn't mean that you suck or you're weak. It's just, it happens. It happens all the time. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, what, like, why did I miss that? I shouldn't have missed that, but I did. And then for bodybuilding, it's like what Lauren was saying before, you wake up one day and you're like, I'm not looking the way I'm supposed to look. I don't feel the way I'm supposed to be feeling. Like, I think everything's off track, but just having that patience and going through the process you're supposed to go through will kind of ease your own mind and stress and anxiety that you might be having. So just patience, I think, is super important for all of these sports.
How do you practice patience?
I think accepting failure,
Hmm.
because people, I mean, we mentioned this before that people are scared to fail, but what who said it? Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's like, if you're not trying, like, you're not going to succeed every time. Like, you're going to fail from a statistic point of view. It's just every champion fails. What was it, like Michael Jordan? He was like the best NBA player of his time, and he missed more shots than he got because he took them, because he did it.
There's an Instagram video. I don't know if you guys have seen. It's one of those ones that's just been seen by like millions. And I don't know if it's a Olympic weightlifter getting ready for the Olympics, but this woman is talking about, I think it is for Olympic weightlifting, but I think whatever it's for, she's talking about how before she gets ready to go to compete, she had a really shitty training session. And she was talking to her coach about how, I don't think I'm ready to go. My training is just, it hasn't felt good. And he said something to her like, the amount of sessions that really need to feel that great in comparison to the ones that are going to feel or maybe not even that good, you're in a good place. Like, if it all felt amazing all the time, if you were PRing all of the time, it would be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, something is off. And I think I agree everything you guys are saying in terms of the fear of failure. I think so many people just kind of get in their own way, and women get scared to try doing something that they've never done before. I think it kind of goes back to having a fixed over a growth mindset where it's like, if you do want to get better at anything, you have to embrace the fact that you're going to have to be a beginner to some extent, and you're not going to have it all figured out because you don't know what you don't know, like Lauren said earlier. But when you're willing to take that chance, magical things can happen. I mean, it's incredible just seeing like what the three of you have been able to accomplish in your sport with your body, deciding to to go into what you did. It's not like any of you came fresh out the womb, bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. You all were willing to be the beginner, and to see what has been able to progress is really remarkable. And from my perspective, what is one thing that you hope to see in the strength training world in regards to women moving forward?
I think that things are trending in a better direction than they have been over the last 20 years, or as long as I can remember, when it comes to women's strength training. You go into any commercial gym now, and I usually train at home or in the other garage, but when I do get out and train in commercial gyms, I'm seeing more women lifting weights than I ever have before. When I was in college 11 years ago, plus, I was one of maybe 5 women. I could count on one hand how many women would actually go into the weight room and lift weights. And now I almost think that there's more women than men now, and at times at least. So I think that's amazing, and I hope that continues. I also would like to see that women embrace strength training, not just for aesthetics, although there's a lot of value to that, but for longevity, because I think there's so many reasons to build muscle from a health standpoint, never mind aesthetics, and never mind performance, but just health, independence, longevity. And I know we're all, I think, probably in our 30s, 40s, whatever. We're not maybe thinking about what life is going to be like when we're in our 70s or 80s. Maybe we are, because we're all coaches and we know, but most people aren't. And now having aging parents and realizing just that's truly the difference maker between having an independent life, being able to do the things that you want and the things that you were doing when you're in your 40s, 50s. Can you continue to do those things when you're 60, 70, 80 and beyond? And so I really hope that more people adopt a health forward standpoint and approach to fitness, and specifically towards strength training.
Lauren, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, similar. I just want to see that women look forward to strength training, and it's something that they celebrate doing. I think even though there's definitely more women than ever strength training, I think there might be still a little bit of like, oh, this is for a little bit of a phase, or let's see how long I'm going to do this for. It's like, you should embrace this as a non-negotiable form of your self-care and like enjoy it, rather than it being like, let's see how it goes type of mentality. And just like, really adopting it as, like I said, a non-negotiable of your self-care.
Sophia?
I would like to see women taking more risks in terms of, like, what do I have to lose if I walk into the gym and go to the weight section, and not being afraid of making mistakes, because we all have been there. We've all been that woman in the weight room who doesn't really know what they're doing, and it just takes time. So just being able to take that risk of, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to try. And it's okay if I make a mistake, because we've all been here before.
I have one quick thing to add. I also think not being resistant to strength training just because you don't look like an Instagram model right now. Like, it's just it doesn't even matter. Like, no matter what you look like or feel like, strength training really is for everyone, and your goal is personal to you. But I think there tends to be a little intimidation of like, oh, if I'm in the gym, like, look at all these women that look amazing already. And it's like, they may or may not have started there. They may have, it doesn't really matter, but like, you're still here. You should still be here. And you need to be here too.
Yeah. How do you overcome that fear of judgment? Is that something that can get fixed, just in hiring the trainer? Or is that something where, it's a little bit more of an internal conversation, or a conversation with a therapist? What do you think?
Both. Both. I think if you're in a healthy place mentally with your own confidence, or, confidence is maybe always a work in progress, but if you've worked on yourself and your inner dialogue, I think it's definitely partly that, giving yourself compassion enough to make, to take risks, like Sophia was saying. But then it's also like the community too. Like, if you're involved in a community that's supportive, you won't feel judged, but that also takes a little bit of a risk on your part to put yourself in that community. So I think it's both.
It sounds like you really need to be brave. And man, I wish I could just like pull a great quote about bravery out of my back pocket right now. I don't have a great quote. I don't know if any of you have a quote in regards to bravery, but I think, it's scary to go into any new environment. And yeah, it might be an epic fail. But on the flip side, it also might turn into an incredible opportunity where you get to meet the most badass version of yourself if you are willing to just try. Is there anything else that any of you would like to add before we get ready to wrap up this episode? Anything we talked about? Yeah, I feel like you got a thought, Rebecca.
I'm thinking of anything we didn't cover. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think hopefully the main takeaway, we all said a lot of super valid points and shared some of our own experiences, but just start wherever you are, whatever fears you have, just start and keep going. And it's super basic, and I don't mean to sound elementary, but I think like that's what's holding a lot of people back, is just that fear of taking the first step. Once you're in the gym, you're going to do something. Just get there, get through the door, and then go.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for having you all here. There is one more thing that we're going to do to end on a super freaking fun note. We're going to play rapid fire questions. Okay, Sophia, you're first, then Lauren, and then Rebecca. First question, what is your favorite pump up song? Here we go.
This Is the New Shit by Marilyn Manson.
Go.
Dreams and Nightmares, Meek Mill.
Go.
Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue.
What is your go-to recovery meal?
Go-to recovery meal. Oh God, probably Kava. Something from Kava.
Go.
A burger with sweet potato fries.
Go.
I was just about to say a burger and sweet potatoes.
Least favorite exercise?
Bulgarian split squats.
Also Bulgarians.
Lunges or split squats.
One supplement that you do take?
Creatine.
Collagen. I mean, I take a lot, but let's just go with that. Yeah.
Creatine.
What is one word to describe how lifting makes you feel?
Badass.
Badass for sure.
Empowered.
Thanks for tuning in. If this episode hit home, don't forget to leave a rating and review. Women are stronger together, so share this with a woman who you want to see rise. When we embrace positive takeaways, we level up, and when we share them, we change the world. Follow us on Instagram at The Dangerous Women Podcast and let us know what you want to hear next. And remember, dangerous women redefine wellness and the world. So be fierce, be authentic, be dangerous.